Andy Gaunt. It's been a while.
Mr. James McGrath, good to see you or speak to you, and hello to everybody listening. Welcome back, mate.
Welcome back to Curb and Canyon. Mate, is it true it was June the last time we put out a podcast and it's now October? How did that happen?
Well, you know, I'll tell you how that happened. A lot of cancellations on your part. And this thing you posted on social media yesterday, I want to get straight into it because you and me, we need to clear some air. We've got to get into this, a little therapy session to start with, because you posting, waiting for Andy Gaunt to cancel yet another podcast. That was low, very low.
You know what? I had to draw first blood, and I can't believe you beat me to it here live on the pod, because I was about to start throwing you under the bus left, right, and center. But dude, get this. So this is our fourth season, I guess, technically, the way that we've divided it. We have 39 episodes behind us, which means this is our 40th episode, 40. It's not an amazing number, but that's nothing to sniff at.
I would say for us, it's quite an achievement. And you know, sure, the run home to 40's been a little slow. We've sort of stumbled towards that, let's say, somewhat milestone. But hey, well done to us. And if you're still listening, and if you're someone who has listened since the start, well, thank you for listening and staying patient with us.
Yeah, totally. And dude, we got so much to talk about. You know, I've kept a number of tabs open on my Internet Explorer for I guess the last 3 months of all the things that have come up that I thought, oh, that'll be good for the pod. That'll be good for the pod. And we're not going to get through all of them, of course, but you know, we've got a little bit of this, we've got a little bit of that, we've got industry stuff to talk about, we've got our cars to talk about and mods. We're going to have a little chat about Luft, one of our favorite Porsche shows that's coming up. You know, I think we got a little bit for everybody. So, you know, who's going to say it first?
Well, first thing I'm going to say is Internet Explorer.
Well, not really. Oh.
What is this, 1997?
Welcome to Curb and Canyon. All right, no, to be fair, I Internet Explorer, whatever. I have Safari, if you must know. But who's going to... All right.
Mate, it's okay. What are you surfing on? Alta Vista? Lycos?
That takes it back. So, Andy, you know, not only have we not spoken for a while, I feel like you've been a little bit absent from the Porsche social media world. No videos? No major no major updates? What's going on with you?
Look, all of the updates on the car have been, maintenance related. So, you know, it's funny. I've got in the show notes, topic number 1, our cars, Bluey Tooey, Little Green. And I feel like from a Bluey Tooey perspective, I already know some of the stuff that's been going on, and it's some pretty exciting stuff. With Little Green, you know, less so. There's certainly been some driving, but as I look at the last invoice I received from the wonderful folks at 9 Auto here, you know, the most recent job, which was not inexpensive, was all just about making the AC work again. So, you know, it, like I say, it's a couple of grand. I knew this one was coming. They told me about it last year. They said, you're sitting down, we're going to send you this quote. I said, okay. And I saw the quote and thought, do you know what? That's something that can wait till next year.
Yeah.
It was already halfway through summer or whatever by this point, so I thought, that's fine. I'll just leave it. But so not only had my AC kick the bucket, but there is what's called a mixer flap, which basically is the thing that sits inside well, let's say, and this, I'm sorry, this is the least technical explanation you are ever going to hear of a highly technical thing. But it basically takes, you have a pipe that comes off your heat exchangers and the like, and there's a flap that directs the airflow. So either bringing in external cold air or warm air that comes off, I think, the heat exchangers, and that is what gives you either heat or cool in your cabin, whether you're running AC or not. And the mixer flaps that actually control that do start to fail eventually on some of these old air cooled cars, and it's a bit of a nightmare to get that fixed. But that was done. And the last drive I had, I was driving along and it didn't matter what temperature I set within the car. It didn't matter whether I had AC on or not. It was blowing full hot. So it was like, imagine your heater on its highest setting. And to be honest, in an old air-cooled car, the heat is actually really good. So I was driving along in the middle of winter with every window down, the sunroof open, even though it was pouring rain, just roasting. It was, and probably the most uncomfortable moment was when I finally arrived at a traffic light and, this family in an SUV looked across, and at that point I was driving in my underwear, but it's all I could do. It was all I could do to handle the heat. So that has subsequently been fixed, all sorted, and the car is going in for a service in a couple of weeks, really just to be ready for a summer of driving. And to be honest, this winter, it's been a little bit slim pickings in terms of driving. As you know, we typically drive all year round here, but I just think everyone's had other things going on in their worlds, and there hasn't been as much driving, and that then means there's not as many photos, there's not as much to share on Instagram. So yes, I have been a little bit quiet. I got to say there's content coming. I feel like I say that every podcast, but yeah, let's be honest, we haven't done a podcast for 4 months, so who cares? But there's content coming. So that's where Little Green's at. That's where the content's at. But you, on the other hand, some fun stuff happening.
It's true, but I'm just going to stop you right there. You've got to stop saying flap, and I'm also not a massive fan of the word flange. Just so you know. I don't know why, but it makes me uncomfortable. And you've said flap at least 5 times, so I'm now feeling slightly uncomfortable.
I'm not hearing that does not surprise me at all, because I saw your Instagram post this morning. You posted a shot of a Singer, I think DLS, with something about pants getting tighter. And it's like, it is, just for anyone listening at home, recording this pod is a little bit like hanging out with a 15-year-old that you went to school with.
To be fair, though, how nice was that Singer?
Of course. And what about you? What's going on?
Dude, so much. It's I've managed to sort of break the back of all of the different things I've had going on this year, and I've managed to find quite a bit of time to get in the garage, and I'm super excited. I've spent the past sort of a couple of weeks helping my friend Chris work on his GT3 Touring. He wanted to install the Soul Performance center muffler delete. We did that in my garage. It was the first time we really got to give my new garage lift. I got a 2-post lift at some point earlier on in the year to replace my scissor lifts, which were starting to get, a little bit bendy. They were getting a little bit dangerous. I guess I've been bitten by the bug again. So working on Chris's car kind of spurred me on. I think also there was a well-timed comment from you on social media where you reminded me that when I first got this 991.2 about a year ago, I kind of promised that I was just going to be focusing on performance mods and not, aesthetics and look and feel. And essentially all I've done for the last 14 months is tweak the look and feel with my stripes and my caliper painting and my yellow tack face, and I was actually about to do yellow seatbelts. I was thinking about posting that on social media, and then you dropped that line, and I was like, fucking hell, I better stop. focusing on something other than tweaking. So, let's do some real mods. And so about this time a month ago, just as I was finishing off the videos about Chris's Senna muffler, somebody got in touch with me and offered me a discount on some H&R springs, which of course made me laugh because you're always going on about my Safari ride height cars. And I thought, you know what, for a couple of $100, even if I don't keep them, this is worth a go. So that rolled into something else, which rolled into something else. And, a couple of weeks later, I've now got, I maybe won't put a dollar value on it, but let's just say I've blown my mods budget for the next couple of years in one foul swoop. And I've got a dozen different things arriving over the next week. I'm going to line them all up in the garage. And then between now and hopefully the end of the year and no later, I'm going to be doing them all. But man, it's a big list. It's a lot.
So what does the list entail? What's done and what is still to be done?
Well, nothing's actually done yet. I bought a carbon fiber diffuser. Can that count as a performance part?
Wouldn't have thought so. I mean, I'm sure I'm sure the copy on the website pictures it as a performance part, but no, I wouldn't have thought so.
Oh well, that's screwed that one up. Also, this carbon fiber performance part, not performance part, that I've had sat on my workbench for the best part of the last 10 months. I actually tried to install it on Saturday. The fucker didn't fit.
Oh no.
I asked them, "Are you sure it fits a 991.2 with the sports exhaust?" And they were like, yeah. It arrived. I looked at it, wasn't too sure about it, tried to fit it. It didn't fit. So anyway, I did try to get started with that. It's not done. So I guess I've done my tune. That's incredible.
I saw the video.
Oh, mate. I've always been a little bit skeptical of engine tuning, to be honest. I mean, the whole idea that you can just magically, wave a wand, flip a switch, and all of a sudden your car puts out loads more power. I just didn't quite believe it, which is probably part of the reason why it sat on my desk for the best part of a year. And now I've done it. I can't believe it didn't sooner, and didn't do it sooner. And now I'm like thinking, well, what else can I do? I can get an extra 50 horses from this. I can install some more turbos and get an extra 100 horses over here. So it's a Softronic tune. I had it on the dyno. It's given me an extra 100 brake horsepower. It's given me an extra 120 foot-pounds of torque.
Wow.
So if you look at the factory specs of the 991.2 lineup, I am 15 brake horsepower away from the GT3. And I'm about par in terms of foot-pounds torque with the GT3. So for a $1,500 tune, I've taken a base Carrera and it's putting out more power than the S, more power than the GTS, and I'm almost at GT3 levels.
I was about to say, where does it sit compared with the GTS? So more power than a GTS?
Yeah. I mean, if these specs are correct, and hopefully the ones I pulled down online are, they're Porsche branded. The GT3 is putting out 500. The GTS is putting just north of, I want to say 450, I think it is, and I'm putting out about 485.
That is incredible. And so, and I imagine, obviously that's visible on the dyno, but I assume it's very much apparent when you're driving.
Yeah, well, I did the butt dyno test first, obviously. Just got out on the road and thought, let's give it some gas. Even just taking it out of my garage, the throttle response, the power was just instantaneous. I almost took it out of the garage a little faster or a little too fast. Because the power is it's right there. It's just right there. And you can really like feel it in the back of your head and in your stomach as you do the standing start, and you're just tearing away. It's really incredible. So I'm thinking now, what else do I do? I'm looking at Flat Six Motorsports in Florida. They've got a stage 2 or a stage 3 tune, which they sort of guarantee will put out about 675 or 700 horses. I mean, it's like $14,000 worth of investment. So I don't think I'm going to go that far. However, if I look at just replacing maybe the turbos with the GTS turbos and some of the other parts that I've got coming with maybe a slightly more sort of custom tune, maybe I can get into the high 500s. Although, to be perfectly honest, where I am right now, it's awesome. It's absolutely awesome. The fact that I've got a base Carrera that's more powerful than the S and the GTS, I'm super happy. That's it. It's like fantastic.
Yeah, I was going to say that because what's the end goal? Because there's only so much usable horsepower, right? And I suppose it comes down to when you're doing any of these sort of mods, what's the use case? What's the end goal? How do you see yourself using it? Because actually, a question I had is the calibration or tuning of things like traction control, does that change as you increase horsepower, either out of the factory from Porsche specifically or with these tunes? Because I imagine, you're putting a hell of a lot more power to the rear wheels. I assume there's some sort of calibration that the factory would do that's probably not done via these tunes.
Not from the research that I've done. No, I don't think so until you actually start playing around with the intercoolers. And you start getting a bit or a little bit closer to the engine. So all of the mods that I'm doing now are basically just bolt-ons. So I'm not doing anything with the engine itself. I'm not doing anything with the suspension. I'm really not doing anything with the drivetrain. It's bolt-ons to basically increase airflow. I mean, that's essentially it, really. And the tune is just remapping how the power's getting, delivered. So there shouldn't really be any reprogramming unless I go. I think the Flat Six Motorsports Stage 4 tune requires a bit of reprogramming. And that's where you're talking 700 horses plus, and you're kind of into Frankenstein world a little bit there. And I want to avoid that. But you ask a really good question. It's like, what am I trying to achieve with this? Well, the first step was actually just trying to see if I could get any more power out of it. Is it possible to flip a switch magically for a little bit of money and get some more power? And so, I've done that. What I'm trying to do now is, can I get the sound quality out of this car and out of this turbocharged engine and the enjoyment of that sound that I got with my naturally aspirated 991.1. Because the Porsche sports exhaust that I've got on this 991.2 is actually really impressive. Just on its own, and even before I put the tune on, I was getting lots of pops and crackles and, all of the stuff that the naturally aspirated engines give you. I was getting that in sports mode with this turbocharged engine. I just want to see if I can dial it up to an 11. So I've got a full Soul Performance exhaust coming. I've got the headers. Oh, wow. I've got the sports cats, and I've got the valved exhaust coming. And so I'm going to put those on in stages. I'm going to start with the valved exhaust and leave the rest factory and see what that's like. I'm then going to put the sports cats on and see what that's like, and then add the headers. So I'm going to sort of put the exhaust on in stages and compare it against the baseline. And each time I do that, I'll make a video and see, kind of how far I want to go. Because if I remember correctly, with my 991.1, I ended up having a full-blown end-to-end Soul exhaust system. And by the time I put the headers on, I really didn't notice any difference, I think.
Well, I imagine the valved exhaust, that's a muffler component, I assume.
Yeah, that's right.
Where most of the volume will come from.
Yeah.
And because did Tommy L, he's done the headers and cats, I think, on his T.
He has. Yeah. Actually, you know what? Right. I could kiss that guy. Not only has he basically tested all of this for me and already made the DIY videos for me to follow and basically recreate. He's such a nice guy. He's been answering all my questions, and he's been very gracious and offering help and advice. What a nice guy. I'm going to be plugging him left, right, and center. And I think I've actually just ordered a couple of t-shirts just to show him some love.
Well, do you know what? We've both spoken with him about coming on the show, and he's very graciously agreed. We're just the worst hosts ever.
Oh, well, let's do that. Let's do that. Let's do it.
Yeah. Wow, so that's really exciting. I think the exhaust is a great mod. I still think, to this day, one of the best things you can do to make your car feel exciting is get volume from it. It makes such a huge difference. And when I think about, my GT4 when I had it, that was a car that had, I think, the right level of power where you could genuinely lean on the car and push it and not be doing silly speeds. But it was, it had this real split personality. It was nice and quiet when you were driving it around, but when you put it in sport mode, when you're in the twisties, the exhaust really howled, and it brings that motorsport element. That's where, it kind of taps back to being a little kid and the idea of what makes cars exciting. And Porsche out of the factory, when they are building a Carrera, the use case for that car is a compromised use case, right? Even if you take into consideration the sports exhaust, they can only make it so loud. They've got their customers to think of, as well as regulations and the like that they have to be meeting. So there's only so far they can go with it. It's brands like Soul Performance that will actually allow you to then extract that bit of extra excitement out of it from a sound perspective.
Right. Yeah, totally. So if sound is like, use case number 2, let's say, the third one is driving experience. And from what I understand, there are ways to improve the way the transmission shifts and retains the power from the turbochargers. So I've got some tile upgrades. They're called inlet tube pipes. Basically, the pipes that connect the airbox to the turbos, and then the turbos to the cats. They're lighter weight, and they've got they increase the flow. Blah blah blah. So I've got some of those coming. They look like a pretty straightforward kind of bolt on. And then from Flat Six Motorsports, I've got some. What are they called? Turbo diverter valves. So the factory valves, even in the GTS models, are plastic. And once you increase horsepower beyond about 500, you can actually lose some of the pressure. They start to bleed and leak a little bit. Right. So as you're shifting through the gears, you're not actually retaining the spool and the power. So by including, by putting these pipes in, and also by switching out some of these other plug and play kind of components, I'm hopefully going to be improving throttle response and improving that sort of driving experience through the gears.
What are you doing? And I half know the answer to this already, but you're talking about a lot of things that in a straight line perspective will make for a faster car. What are you doing so that you can slow down and get around corners?
Dude, I live in the Midwest. I don't need to worry about that.
I know you don't, but ultimately this is going to be a dragon slayer, right? That's what you're trying to build.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've started looking a little bit into like the upgraded brake kits. And at some point, maybe I'll get there. The various options that there are for the brake rotors. In fact, I think my friend Chris showed me a link the other day to some kind of carbon fiber brake discs or carbon fiber brake rotors. Have you heard of those?
Well, yeah. I mean, Porsche obviously do the PCCBs,
right? But I'm talking like carbon weave.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think you need that. If you, I mean, who needs anything?
I was going to say, I don't need any of these things.
I mean, look, if I'm honest, I imagine the stock brakes, unless you're on track, will perform just fine.
Yeah.
And I've seen how you drive. I don't think you're pushing that fast. But I know. Again, I hate to plug him again, but I know Tommy had done a brake upgrade on his I mean, I would think honestly, if you just put the S brakes on, which are a bigger rotor, larger calipers, that would more than suffice because they're the same brakes that are on the GTS. I think. I don't think there's anything. I don't think there's a huge amount to be gained beyond that for a street car.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And I'm never going to be getting my car out onto the track because my fat head inside a ginormous helmet does not fit inside my little cabin. Oh, by the way, I knew there was something I wanted to tell you. I knew there was something I wanted to get you. So my birthday the other day, you posting that photo of my head, the close-up shot in the video. Oh my God. Dude. I mean, I'm massively self-conscious about the size of my head already.
I'm so sorry.
And the screenshot that you chose was the one that my head is so close to the camera, it's uncomfortable.
Mate, that's every shot. That's the entire scene.
Yeah, I know.
Put it on the other side of your car, then your head will look small.
Yeah, but then my stomach just looks even bigger. So, it swings and roundabouts.
Do you know what? I like it. I like the intimacy of it. I feel like I'm right there with you. It's really quite nice.
Screw you, man.
So what about suspension?
You know what? I haven't even started thinking about that, to be honest. I've got so much to work through with all of these different parts that are coming. So that post you mentioned about social media last night, I was up till 2 a.m. and I was looking at videos and researching tools that I need and DIY jobs, and I think I'm almost at the point of psyching myself out of these jobs. I don't think I can add anything else to the list right now. But I am super excited about all of this stuff. I really kind of I haven't attempted any of these jobs before. Like I haven't done any of this. I mean, the exhaust that I've put on my previous cars, I've had done for me, like Porsche Minneapolis and Eurocharge Minneapolis. They've done the work for me.
Oh, I thought you did.
No, well, I've done exhaust work on my friend Chris's Turbo and his GT3, and we've done that together. And to be fair, I'm roping him in to help me with a lot of this stuff. So this is going to be. I might even swear him in as a deputy auto amateur. Kind of. Auto amateur will no longer be a company of one. It'll be a brand of two.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm very excited to see it all. I was interested that you chose H&R Springs rather than IBARC. I think H&R tend to drop a little lower than an IBARC and tend to ride a little firmer.
Well, you know what? I'm interested in doing the job, and I honestly.
It's not that hard. It's actually, that's one you can do easily.
Well, again, that's another Tommy L Garage video that I've watched.
Yeah, no, I didn't want to say it.
I've watched that video approximately 50 times, so now I feel like I could, sort of recite all of his commentary, on spec. It looks pretty straightforward. But honestly, if these hadn't been offered to me for a couple $100, I don't think I would have. I probably wouldn't have bought them anyway. So I'm going to give it a go. If they're good, if they're fun, great. If I don't like them, I'll go back to stock or try something else. I'm more looking forward to doing the job actually and making the video than anything else.
But you will honestly, your next trip to Tail of the Dragon, there is a benefit. There is a benefit from a cornering perspective.
Maybe. In fact, which one of your mates? When I went to the Tail of the Dragon this summer, I've got a shot of me going around a corner, taking a right. So I'm in the outside. I can't remember. Yeah. Was it Philby? I honestly don't remember. But one of your mates was like, "Oh, you got your car lowered," and I was like, "No." That's
I can't remember.
I was like, no, that's me in the car weighing it down, going around a corner at speed.
Yeah, it's just your suspension loaded up in a corner.
What is it? Centrifugal motion and gravity.
I love those photos. There's some cracking shots from that trip.
Yeah, I really love it like that. But that whole area's been hit pretty hard recently with Hurricane Helene, which
it's been terrible.
It's crazy. And, to think a hurricane that forms over the sea has turned into a tropical storm, which has come inland, and there's been so much rainfall in the mountains that these mountain towns and cities have been basically washed away. It's insane.
Yeah.
I saw a video of the Topeka Lodge, which is this old historic kind of hotel and restaurant at one end of the Tail of the Dragon, and it's got this beautiful whitewater river that kind of flows past it. But it's it must be a good 20 feet above the river. The photo or the video I saw had the water like level with the patio, and I mean, I hope it didn't get washed away. It's just incredible what's gone on there.
Oh yeah, it's just devastating. These poor people and communities that are having to live through this. Where I'm watching it from half a world away, and we're just as shocked over here. And our thoughts are with everybody dealing with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And now Florida's doing the same. And I know a lot of Porsche owners and other car enthusiasts down in Florida wake up and find their garages completely underwater. It's tragic.
Yeah, well, I was going to watch Adam LZ, whose videos I've been watching a lot of lately. He's got this Project 964 that he bought from Japan, a mint green 964 Tiptronic, which he has just gradually turned into an absolute monster. And it's now got a 4 litre or 4.1 litre, 4 litre Ross Sport engine in it. The thing is just the most incredible build. Just an incredible car. But I saw he'd posted on YouTube this morning that where he is, again, he's got this whole compound had looked like it had flooded. It's as I say, it's seemingly hitting incredibly hard, and we can see it from here. So like I say, thinking of everybody.
Yeah, totally. Now, looking at the other coast, on the west coast, let's talk about Luftgekühlt.
Yeah, so I nearly went this year, and
you what?
which of course I would have. I mean, I don't know why you didn't go, but I was talking about it with Kath, and she said, "Why don't you go? You should just go." And to be honest, the main reason I wanted to go was it felt as though the entire global Porsche community was descending on Luft 10. And, people we've had on the show, like Rick from Rico Customs, Mo and Kirsten from Flat Six High Five, all of these people that, you just have these relationships with via social media and messages and conversations. I would have really loved the opportunity to meet them. And Kath was saying, well, yeah, you should go. And unfortunately, I had a work event on the Friday night here in Melbourne, which just meant I couldn't get there in time for it. And look, there was a part of me that thought, well, if I'm going to go to Los Angeles for another Luft event, it probably makes sense for me to do one that's not a sequel of one I've already done.
Yeah.
So the only other time I've been to Luft was when it was at Universal.
Yeah.
So as much as I think that was an incredible event, and I've not been to any others, but my sense of it has always been that as a location, that was one of the best, unless you're at Deus Ex Machina back for the first one. So as much as I think that, there was a part of me that thought, okay, if I'm going to do something dumb and fly to Los Angeles for a weekend, then I might as well do that when it's Luft somewhere else versus Universal, which I've done before. But that said, it looks like there were all of these additional activations and things they did this time around to just elevate it yet again. It seems to be now an incredibly well-oiled machine.
Yeah, I get the sense of that as well. In fact, so I heard through the grapevine that every year they are just trying to up their game constantly, and same thing but different year on year. they're actually doing another event this weekend in Chattanooga, which, if my American geography serves me correctly, is Tennessee-ish or Kentucky.
Yeah, right.
So, somewhere in the middle there. Somewhere right in the middle. But yeah, there's a motor car festival there this weekend, Chattanooga Motor Car Festival, and they're going to be there, I think, for like 2 or 3 days. I don't know if it's like considered a pop-up show or what have you, but yeah, we're seeing, kind of like, I guess, little break-offs from the main annual events as well pop up now. And I'm all for it. I mean, the one that I attended in Indianapolis was still the best show I've been to date in the 6 or 7 years now that I've been attending shows like this. It was just absolutely phenomenal. No other event has come close, actually. So, wow, if they're going to start spinning up these, little pop-up shows here and there and everywhere, God, that's awesome.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, what they've been doing in Europe is incredible. I think the challenge, with all of these things is how do you maintain a sense of intimacy and cool underground vibe whilst just building it to be able to cope with now the level of consumer participant demand. Because if you look at the crowds at Universal, it looked like it was heaving.
Yeah.
And, I even saw a few people posting on social media how frustrating it was to try and get photos without people in them and all this sort of stuff. And look, to be honest, my view on that, certainly when I went to Luft, was get over it, because it is a show about cars and people. Mm-hmm. And you know what? The only choice you've got is to take photos of cars with people around them, because that's the experience. Right. And, to see people getting frustrated that someone's in their way because they want to have a look at a 917K race car that performed at Le Mans, I think actually that person has just as much of a right to step in and take a look at that and experience it as you do to catch it in your lens.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of shows, our good friend Darren Pfister at FD Motorsports, his Deutsche Spritz Tour, I think it's called.
I see it's on.
So by the time we release this, it will have happened. But it's coming up this weekend, and I've seen all of the promotions he's been running this week. He's got some pretty cool merch. I might hit him up and see if I can buy a T-shirt from him, because I kind of want one. This community just that we're in continues to grow and evolve. And man, after doing these Tail of the Dragon trips with Jay and Michael and Chris and so on over the last couple of years, I'm kind of just aching to have access to more of this. I don't want to live in a world maybe where I've had too much, and everything's just completely saturated, but I'd love to go on that road tour. And I'd love to get on an Overcrest Productions road tour. Once a year is not enough. I've got to do another one. I've got to get out there. And I want to go and see another Luft. And I didn't make it this year or last year, but hopefully next year. I feel like we're really lucky. There's just so much stuff going on. I just want more access.
No, I agree. I agree. And being where I am, we're miles from all of it. And look, thankfully we have, I think, an incredible Porsche culture right here in Australia. And my personal view is that Victoria here in Melbourne is the best example of that. But globally, there is so much I want to experience. And for me, to be honest, the big pull that I feel at the moment is wanting to, it's the sort of outreach pull, if you like. All of these people that I've had contact with that I consider friends, having never met them. You and I have never shook hands. And all of these people like that, who I just think, I just really want to find a way to come together with these people. And it's why, as I say, Luft 10 for me had a real pull to it, a real draw. Because as you say, I just want to absorb more of this entire culture. The driving component I've always loved. but it's also the people that are involved that I think are something incredibly special about Porsche culture, and I feel a real draw to wanting to experience that on a deeper level than I can via Instagram messages.
Yeah. Well, speaking of travel, my friend, lifelong, awesome, one of my best friends, Jody, who lives in Perth, she is actually on her way to the States this year. I'm going to be hanging out with her in California in December. I've been promising to visit her now for the best part of the 15 years that I've been living in the States. And she's been promising to come out here as well, but she's been out here. This will be the third year in a row now. She speaks at conferences in Vegas, and so she comes out and we hang out. But I've said to her, look, all right, okay, next year is probably going to be the year I come to Australia. This year, I was maybe going to come to Australia. Last year, no, there was no chance. But this year was maybe. Next year, probably. So who knows, dude? Maybe I'll get to give you a high five and say hello to Choco, the dog, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, dude. If that happens, there has to be a rally component.
Yeah, totally. I'll have to steal a car or something, but
absolutely.
Hell yeah.
That's all right. There's ways and means. There's ways and means. Well, I've got. Speaking of rallies, so Alpine Range Rally 10 is coming up in about 5 or 6 weeks for me, and having missed number 9, which was heartbreaking to organise a rally and then not go, was a low point for me this year. So I've not done a rally since November last year. So I'm so looking forward to this one. Just cannot wait. I mean, and I'm in the middle of, this is always the exciting part. Once I'm designing merch, that's a thing for me, which I always it just gets me so excited. And, the idea of, I kind of tease it out with everybody and within the group. And, there's always a kind of a reveal moment, and you're just looking for that moment where everyone's like, oh, this one's really good. This one's really good. So hopefully everyone loves the merch, but I think this rally is going to be just fantastic. I just can't wait to be out having an adventure again in Little Green.
So are all of the usual suspects signed up again?
Yeah, usual suspects. We try and keep it as sort of small as we can within that existing group. And, it's so hard. I get a lot of messages from people who want to come and like good dudes who I know and would love to have along. And we've just, it's just difficult to maintain a group size that is realistic to take on a drive like this. So I've always said I don't want to have any more than 20 cars. I think it's certainly about as much as we can manage in terms of the basics of booking accommodation, booking food, all of those types of things. There's a lot of moving parts, but even just to safely keep everybody together and safely, get everybody covering some 2,000 kilometers over 4 days. I just want to, we unfortunately have to keep it somewhat confined. So yeah, the usual crew, but we're doing it a little differently this time. We're adding a day and driving into some areas that we've never been to before. So I can't wait for that as well, exploring some new roads.
Exciting. I'm jealous.
Yeah. And so you did, we've not spoken since you did your Tail of the Dragon trip.
Yeah, Tail of the Dragon was awesome. But there was a bit of a shadow cast over the whole weekend because everybody had some kind of car issue. It was,
really?
it was pretty weird. So Jay got sideswiped before we even got there. Somebody drove into the back of him on a roundabout, but he showed up. He drove up, and there he was. Spent the whole weekend driving with the side of his car smashed in. But on day 2, his ignition wouldn't turn over, and so we managed to kind of fiddle it, and we managed to get it to start. But then later on in the day, it just went dead. So day 3, he basically rode shotgun in a bunch of different cars so that he could enjoy the weekend. And then he stayed behind an extra day to get his car fixed at a local shop when they opened up on the Monday, while the rest of us. Yeah. So that was Jay. Mark and his son Matthew, his ECU and air conditioning went on the blink the week before the trip. So they hired a Cayman from Turo, and so they didn't miss the weekend. And they discovered halfway through the weekend that the wheels were put on backwards. Yeah,
what?
The wheels had been put on the wrong way, basically. So they decided to sort of, pull off the gas and just take it easy, and they couldn't be bothered swapping them around. But yeah, whoever had basically rotated the tires had put them on the wrong way. I know, right? So that was their issue. I think, what was Michael's issue? Michael's starter motor went as he got home. Me and Chris both got flat tires. We got nails in the same part of the tire. No. And my wheel bearing went as well. It sounded like my PDK transmission was going, actually, and there was this humming kind of like drone sound in the cabin. So I had that issue. No. And then Todd, who was driving his convertible 993, one of his belts snapped, and he got a flat tire just as he was getting back into Minnesota. So everybody's car was fucked at some point during the weekend. So yeah, we're hoping next time we go back, everything will be fine. But maybe.
But was the driving good anyway?
Was.
Because this was your first time there in the 991.2, right? In
yeah, it was absolutely awesome. And I brought my son Luke with me, who's 7.
That's right.
He really enjoyed it. Absolutely loved it. In fact. In one of the he likes owls, and in one of the gas stations we saw this giant stuffed owl which he bought, and in the
in the passenger
right,
seat.
It was in the passenger seat the whole time. But in one of the photos that was taken by Dragon Slayer or Killboy or what have you, there's this great shot of my car, and all you can see is this owl's head in the passenger seat.
It's a right-hand drive 911 being steered by an owl.
So that was a really great weekend, and the car handled really well. I think in part that probably spurred me on to do some of the mods as well, because I took advantage of PASM for the first time. This is the first car I've had PASM, and I was driving the whole time with that on, and really enjoyed, and noticed the difference that it made on the suspension and going around the corners. So get it on. We were thinking about doing like a full color trip in 2 weeks' time, but with the hurricane and so on, we kind of knocked that on the head.
So this kind of leads me, and I know I'm working up the list on our show notes in reverse somewhat. I did read in your T911 column, you talked about the one thing it did sort of bring to light from your perspective was the manual versus PDK thing, and that you still think you find a higher level of engagement in the manual transmission.
Yeah, I think that's true. Having been on the tail now with a couple of PDKs and a couple of manuals, I think the manual's the way to go ultimately. And there's going around those corners and just picking exactly the moment when you want to change gear and knowing exactly the rev range you want to be in. It's more precise. I guess that's the way I would describe it. There's more precision.
Are you shifting in PDK, or are you letting the car?
No, I am shifting in PDK. I've got it in manual mode. But there's just something about that moment where you make the decision to put the clutch in and you move the shifter where your heart's in your mouth a little bit, and the clutch goes back and everything re-engages. I think just if I had to take on a road like that, and I was given the choice between a manual and an automatic, I'd pick the manual for sure.
Would you, if the car was a different car, let's say it was a turbo or it was a GT3, would you feel differently, do you think? I mean, I know a turbo doesn't come in a manual anyway, so it's a moot point, but I suppose my point being, do you think your interest or preference for a manual is driven somewhat by the car being, let's say, a lower powered, kind of base model where you can lean on it really hard regardless, or do you think you'd feel that way across the board?
Yeah, that probably has something to do with it, actually. Yeah, the idea of having to work harder to get more out of the car and really make it perform.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, just thinking about the base 991.1 and the base 991.2, yeah, there is a power difference. But it's not 100 horses. It's not the difference between a base and a turbo or a base and a GT3.
No, that's right.
You still have to work to get the best performance out of the car. It's funny looking at Chris in my rearview mirror where I'm pulling away from him, and then a split second later, there he is. He's just right there. It might be different now, actually, when I take it back and I've got all of this extra power and with the tune. I wonder what that's going to be like.
I think a lot of that, it just depends on the road type. In terms of, I know when I had the GT4, for example, there are certain roads where if I wanted to, I could just pull a gap on the person behind me. But that would really be dependent upon if that was typically something where it was perhaps a higher speed road, perhaps it was up a hill, and then you have a torque advantage and things like that. But through the tighter twisties, I didn't, that car or people we've driven with GT3s, anything like that. There's still, I think, ultimately it comes down to cornering speed more than it does power. And a well set up car and someone who knows how to drive it will keep up with most things. But I think it's an interesting point about the manual, and talking about the decision to put the clutch in, because I think one of the things I've found with my manual cars, certainly versus my PDK car, is, there are some roads where you'll take a second gear corner and then there's a straight and another second gear corner. And you kind of have this decision to make of, do I wring the car's neck for 3 seconds and keep it in second coming into that next corner, or do I shift up and then shift down? And, so often I think in a manual car, I just wring the car's neck, and maybe that's not the fastest way to do it, but it feels like a motorsport experience versus if you're in a PDK, there's no cost to shifting up, because it's just, you just grab the pedal and you're up a gear and it's okay. You're still in the power band, and then you can, a moment later shift down again. So I think again, there's something about the manual that makes you make these decisions a little, or I suppose the decision-making process requires a little more thought than it does in a PDK, because the compromises aren't there, and that I think helps. I don't know, just helps me get a little more out of the experience. I don't have a view either way. I'm not one of these people who thinks that it's manual or nothing. It's 3 pedals or nothing. I'm not of that view at all, and I really enjoy driving a PDK car. I think ultimately, my preference for road driving in the twisties for a spirited drive would almost always be a manual.
Yeah, I think this is why all Porsche enthusiasts need 3 or 4 cars in their garage.
Yeah, it's 100% fair
to choose from. Yeah,
No, I agree. Now, as I said, we're going up the list. I did mention that I'd read your column in Total 911, which mentioned your Tail of the Dragon drive and mentioned your preference for manual and PDK. Can we take a minute to talk about Total 911?
We've got to. Yeah, we absolutely have to. And not only Total 911, but Mr. Lee Sibley. We've got to talk about him as well.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, Total 911 is folding. The magazine is finishing up. All of us who write a column for it, the Living the Legend column, were notified, I guess, a couple months back, right? And it's unfortunately one of these things where, like so many magazines, they're propped up by advertising spend, and the advertisers just aren't there to warrant the magazine continuing to be printed. So it's coming to an end, which is a real shame.
Yeah, in fact, issue 249 is on the shelves right now. My dad, in fact, just emailed me this week saying he got his in the mail, and this was the first he'd heard about it. He got an email this week saying your subscription's over. So if you rush out and get the very last ever edition of Total 911, you can show that to your grandkids one day. But it's really sad. God, I could talk about it for ages, but long story short, Total 911 is the reason I bought my first Porsche. I've always loved Porsche, and I've talked about it across so many different forums and platforms since I was a kid. But in my my late 30s, in a position where I was able to buy a car because I was no longer in a city like New York City or London where you didn't need a car. Oh look, there's a Porsche magazine on the shelf. I'll buy it. It was an edition that was a buyer's guide. I spent the best part of a month
they did a lot
reading
of that stuff.
every page, read that thing cover to cover, learning about every single generation, and there were price ranges and all the stats on every model. And it opened my eyes to the fact that, well, actually, there is a Porsche out there in my price range that I've come to adore over the years that might actually be a car that I can buy. And a month later, I'm out there in LA picking it up. And I subscribed to it, and I followed, and I got to know Lee through the magazine, and he invited me, to, blah, blah, blah. I've been writing a column for a couple of years now as of you. I wouldn't be driving the cars I'm driving today if it wasn't for Total 911 magazine. And, oh man, I'm going to miss it. I'm going to absolutely miss it. But, what I do like and love is that Lee isn't going anywhere, and Lee is the heart and soul of that magazine. It's a fascinating story about how he got started there, because he wasn't the editor in the beginning, and he's become the editor at large, and he's been running that show for a good number of years. But he's got his own life and his own brand and his own Porsche experience and dream, which is 9 Werks outside of Total 911, and hopefully that's going to live and continue, which we all know it is. So, if you don't follow 9 Werks, follow 9 Werks. 9 Werks Radio, 9 Werks Road Trips, 9werks.com, 9 Werks Lee on Instagram. All of the fantastic content and knowledge and excitement that has been coming through Total 911 magazine. It's not going anywhere because it's there in 9 Werks.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, what I've always appreciated about the magazine is I like that in the Porsche space there, different magazines actually fill different needs.
Yeah.
So for me, here in Australia, Duck and Whale is probably the most prevalent Porsche magazine. Duck and Whale is produced by an organisation that is really design focused, really photography focused. So I always find in Duck and Whale that's a magazine I will look through for the visual experience. Yeah. I think the photography and the layout, the art direction's absolutely stunning. What I really loved about Total 911 is I think the journalistic approach in that magazine was absolutely top shelf, and they knew their stuff, did really interesting articles, really interesting comparison articles breaking down one car versus another, whether that was across generations or within generations, but very well considered, very well researched, and in such a way that I think there was something really that you could gain from them. I think, the sad thing, if I can pontificate for a moment about the slow decline of magazines, I think I've always loved magazines since I was a kid, and I think the role that magazines filled in our life was one where if you have a specific interest, let's say your niche interest is Porsche, your access to content around Porsche is limited. Yeah. or traditionally it always has been. And a magazine was the one thing that every month you would hold out waiting for, so that if you went to the newsagent or if you had a subscription and it arrived, you would then have a month to absorb that content. Right. And every magazine that I had, I used to flip through it a million times, read articles over and over again, particularly if it was an article about a car that I was specifically interested in. And of course, what's happened over time is that desperate need we have for that content has been filled in a far more prolific way with social media, with YouTube, where you can pick up your phone any day of the week and see plenty of amazing content on Instagram, or watch an incredible video on YouTube that gives you that fix. So when the magazine arrives, the desperate need that you once had to just scour it cover to cover, that has dissipated over time. Yeah. And that's why we've seen, I think, just across the board that magazines' influence and prevalence in news agents and the like has just diminished so much. But like you say, congratulations to Lee and the entire team there at Total 911 for such a great mag. It's certainly been a thrill for me being able to have a printed column. I mean, I kind of hassled Lee to let me write something for him. I've always wanted to be a writer in print, and the fact that he, probably just thought, oh yeah, it'd be good to have a dude from Australia. That was that felt like a blessing for me. So I'm certainly going to miss writing my monthly column. Yeah. But like James said, if you can get a hold of the last issue, then I'd say it's well worth doing. And I'm sure everyone here is already following Lee and Werks. God knows we promote them enough on this pod. So look, shall we jump to video of the week?
Yes. And you know what? I've watched video of the week. Can you believe it?
Have you actually?
Well, yeah. I mean, you sent me the link 10 minutes before the pod, and I had nothing better to do.
I was about to say which one, because I had suggested one. I had suggested actually one of Adam LZ's. This has just been an entire pod of promoting other people's YouTube channels, but I had suggested one of Adam's videos. But then this morning I thought, actually, no, I want to talk about this one.
Is it because it's a 964 and you have a 964?
I must confess, I'm quite conscious of the fact that there's a video of the week does often feature an air-cooled car. But did we ever? I needed to ask you this question. Do you remember that video of the yellow GT3 Touring that I think was going to be video of the week last time we recorded, but I don't think we ever did that pod?
Was it the one that I chose?
No.
Because there have been a number of videos of the week that I've suggested that have never seen the light of day.
What, 3? Come on. What have you ever suggested? No, remember that amazing yellow GT3? It's like,
no.
Yes, you do. It's in LA. I sent it to you a couple of months ago. Anyway, do you know what? If we haven't featured it on the pod, next time we record in 6 months, we'll make that video of the week. It's like a Bahama yellow 991.2 GT3 Touring.
Dude, you've not only lost me, you've lost the audience. Let's talk about the actual video of the week.
Let's talk about the actual video of the week, which is a 964 RS. It's on the Furka Pass. It's a film by Night Run Films, who are doing some really lovely stuff, actually. If I'm honest, there's maybe a little bit too much of a penchant for driving gloves, but I'll let that slide.
I've got to say, I know one or two people that wear driving gloves, and I just come on, I can't do it. I can't. I just seriously. Driving gloves.
If you're wearing driving gloves, stop now. Because it is the equivalent of the guys who go road cycling and then get off their bikes at the cafe and come click, 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 clicking on their stupid cycling shoes into the cafe. They think it's cool. Everyone around them just thinks they're the biggest dorks ever. Here's the thing. If you are driving a short wheelbase 911 with a wooden steering wheel, wear yourself some driving gloves. I'm all about that. But if you've got a water-cooled car, if you're driving a car with an Alcantara steering wheel or leather, just no to the driving gloves. Stop.
Burn the driving gloves. Burn them.
Exactly. Anyway, let's talk about this film because actually, if I'm honest, one of the first things I noticed, so the film is actually called Porsche 964 RS, Carrera RS, No Emotional Coffee Runs. And the first thing I thought when I saw that was, it seemed a bit of a snarky dig at Cars with Luke, who often does a coffee run where he gets a bit emotional. It felt to me like it was actually, okay, as a fellow YouTuber, that seemed, like I say, a little bit snarky, but it's actually the driver of the car who says it, this guy Laz, who says it pretty early on in the film. He says, I don't drive it in the city or use it for emotional coffee runs. It's just for in the hills. So, okay, there was some context for that. It wasn't a dig at another YouTuber. Look, if I'm honest, I one of the reasons, and this may sound a bit goofy, but one of the reasons I'm not producing as much content is that I find the locations here, I want to try and make beautiful content.
Yeah.
And I find the locations of where I drive pretty bland by comparison. I'm not going to talk about the industrial estates where you film. But, you know, anyone who's making these videos in Switzerland, at the Furka Pass and the Susten Pass and all these amazing places, come on. Talk about unfair advantage much.
I know, right?
It's just... So to see a 964 RS driving these incredible roads, the Furka Pass with that amazing hotel on the hairpin that everyone takes a photo of. And do you know what I love is something that Laz said. He talks about having a 992 GT3 and how much he loved that car, but how he couldn't really experience it. Because to drive it at anywhere near the level he needed to drive it to feel like he was leaning on it, pushing it, he's going to end up in jail. And, the 964 is a nice antidote to that. So I know I'm a 964 maven, but I seeing a 964 in this environment with this sort of cinematography, I think it's pretty special.
So let me just interject an alternative theory. So Laz got himself the GT3 Touring 992 and didn't appreciate the fact that he wasn't able to afford his monthly payments because of his wife's expensive coffee addiction. So he had to give it back and trade it in for the air-cooled 964. And now he's out driving by himself because the wife doesn't want to be seen in a 30-year-old car going to Starbucks to get a Frappa Floppa with half whip, no wop, whip phoned up. That's the real answer, Andy.
Where the fuck did that come from? Because also, it's a 964 RS, right?
Yeah, I know it is.
I mean, in terms of dollars...
I know it is.
That'd probably sell for more than a 992 GT3 Touring.
I know it is. The film is absolutely spectacular.
I love the film. James, you and me will talk off air.
I'm getting phone calls from our sponsors. I think we've lost a couple of our sponsors.
Our driving glove sponsors have just pulled the pin.
Well, look, on that bombshell, I think we're done for another pod. And it's not going to be another 3 months until we record next time. You better not cancel on me next week, Andy Gorns.
Don't even.
Yeah, don't even.
I really want to make this clear to our listeners. The amount of times, do you know what? This morning is the first time I haven't done show notes because, quite honestly, I thought I'm going to do this, and then 5 minutes before we're supposed to start, I'm going to get a text message saying that opens with the words, fuck.
We'll see. We'll see. Well, look, everybody, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you in another pod soon.
Thanks, gang. See you soon.